All right, first and foremost, if this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you already know what I'm about. You already know what the show is about. Get right to the point. And today we are going to dive deep into this concept of trade-offs. All right, trade-offs, number one. Number one, understanding what trade-offs are. No, there's no perfect situation. There's no actual one situation, no law, no policy, no new rule that could be implemented that's just going to make for perfect outcomes. There's just going to be trade-offs. You're trading off one thing for another. And you have to be able to take the good with the bad and ask yourself, what am I actually trading off, and is it worth it? All of these questions need to be answered before you start putting new things and new laws and new rules in place, or whatever it is you're about. And when it comes to the decisions that you make, right? Number two, next thing that we're going to kind of discuss in on top of that, or is going to be a topic of discussion as I explain what the trade-offs are and stuff like that, is that, listen, it's highs and lows, all right? Highs and lows in business, highs and lows when it comes to how you move, and you have to be able to be resilient enough to shake off those bad days, all right? And there are going to be some rough days, all right? I myself, I'm recording this maybe about a couple hours after I'm a diehard Michigan Wolverines football fan, and I'm recording this just a couple hours after we just got our ass embarrassed on national TV to Texas, and we haven't lost the game, haven't experienced this feeling of losing, especially when we're talking about the Michigan Wolverines. I've experienced this feeling of losing in a very, very long time. It wasn't since TCU year ago, before last season, that I've experienced this feeling. So, I myself had to shake it off and, get to this recording and do what I normally do and get my work done and stuff like that. And by the way, there's actually an episode coming out on the difference between your work and your job. So I have that coming out soon. Just stay tuned, right? So anyway, let's dive into, we're going to talk a lot about the concept of trade-offs, all right? And this is a very, very important discussion, because as a person who has, played college football, coached high school football for 2, I was a college scout. The whole concept what got me out here to South Florida was the job I took, a job offer that I took to work for the Miami Dolphins Foundation as a seller. And the college football game is one of the ways, probably the biggest way, the most major way in which I learned business, and which really built my philosophy and built this concept and built what we have now as the number one podcast on innovative teamwork. It's a new episode that comes out every single day, and it's been like that for well over a year at this point, right? New episodes daily over here, and it's largely because of how much of the business and how locked in I've stayed in regards to how college football works. All right. So if you're new here, just know that I'm someone that's always looking at the college football game and taking lessons from that game and applying it to business, and applying it to how to go about building teams and making it so teams are moving in a cohesive way. All right. So just understand that if you're new here, if you're a regular listener, this is information you already know, right? So I'm recording this a week after. It's a week after Labor Day weekend, right? And it dawned on me just last week, not only last week, but obviously this week as well, as I was watching some college football. That's usually my Saturdays during the fall. It dawned on me last week when yes, again, I am a Michigan fan, but the second team that I cheer for, my second team, a team that I like to see do well, is Florida State Seminoles. So I'm always keeping up with them, seeing how they're doing when it comes to big games and stuff like that. It would have been like, if I had my choice, I would love to see Florida State and Michigan compete in a national championship every year, where Michigan actually edges them out for a victory. That would be my dream situation. But right now it looks like the two programs are kind of far from that ever happening, right? So anyway, Florida State has had a very, 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 very rough start to the 2024 football season. All right. They opened up this season a week before everyone else in a game against Georgia Tech, I believe, in Dublin, Ireland, and they got their ass kicked by Georgia Tech. Now, I wasn't too angry about that game, seeing that the defensive coordinator for Georgia Tech is actually a guy that I played with. His name is Tyler Santucci. He was the senior captain back when I played at Stony Brook, and to see him be the defensive coordinator and go and do his thing and to get that win, I wasn't too upset about that one. I was like, look, first game they'll get it right. They're not going to be the undefeated team they were a year ago, but at the same time, hey, good shout out to Coach Santucci for getting that dub, right? Now, when they lost to Boston College a week later, this one was really, really concerning, and it inspired not only this solo episode, but there's also going to be an article written about this as well. That loss was that one was a little more concerning, and let me tell you why, all right? So the quarterback for Florida State is a guy named DJU. His full name isn't U, but I don't want to mispronounce it. I believe it's Ulungalele, something like that. So for the sake of me not, disrespecting him and mispronouncing his name and stuff like that, we're just gonna go with DJU. And I remember seeing DJU and how dominant of a player he was in high school. I mean, easily, hands down, had all the intangibles. Easily, one of the greatest high school quarterbacks I think I've ever seen. I mean, big, was making all the throws, just a motherfucking dude, all right, a motherfucking player. And right out of high school, he committed to Clemson, and Clemson had that bad man. I mean, easily the best player, in my opinion, that has come out of college since I've been watching college football, which was Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence was actually, I always credit him with the reason that I was able to put the finishing touches on Swiftly, the acronym that my business is all about, which is Swiftly, skilled, well-informed front team, and then you lift yourself, because I had skilled, I had well-informed, I had front team, and then I was watching him against Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl. It was the Sugar Bowl, and you had a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence who was as accurate as he was. I mean, just can make every throw, just sticking it in there, just a play, right? But then I saw him, step up in the pocket one time when he saw a lane, and he took it like 50 yards, just sprinted down the field, took it 50 fucking yards. I mean, and you saw he was faster probably than some of the receivers that he had on his team. So to have that kind of accuracy and that ability, and then to be just as fast as your receiver, I was like, lift yourself. I was watching that game. And again, as a Michigan fan, it's always nice to see Ohio State get their ass kicked. So I was watching that, and then I saw Trevor Lawrence take off, and I saw how good he was in all the intangibles and everything he had, and I came up with that plus LY, lift yourself. So I mean, I may be a little biased, but again, I look at him as easily the best player that has come out of college football in the last 10 years. I mean, just a player, motherfucking player, right? So DJU was supposed to be the guy that came in after Trevor Lawrence that had similar intangibles. All right, he was just as tall. He had the arm strength. He probably wasn't just as fast, but he was fast enough. So he was supposed to be the guy that comes into Clemson and keeps the train going, keeps that program on a national championship level. Right. So watching DJU, well, first of all, watching DJU against Boston College, and then initially you understand how that weekend started. I started that weekend watching Clemson taking on Georgia, and Georgia just absolutely stomped all over Clemson. And then later you watch DJU, who was supposed to be the guy that was keeping the Clemson tradition alive. You watch him just stink up the joint against Boston College, right? Not only did you watch him stink up the joint, but as I'm watching the Boston College versus Florida State game, I'm seeing DJU shooting commercials, doing the sell with Celsius, the energy drink, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, what has happened to the college game? The college game now is more so about exploiting talent. The college game isn't about developing young talent, which is what it was meant to be. All right. I want to be clear on it. It was meant to be back when DJU was probably a freshman. I remember he actually started at St. John Bosco High School. He became the starter when he was either a freshman or a sophomore, one of the two. Back during those times, and it's not that long ago, the college game was meant to develop young men. All right. It was meant to develop players, develop very incredibly gifted and talented high school football players. They come to college, they develop under some solid coaching, and then they get themselves ready for either the NFL or a career after sports and whatever it is they're going to do. Develop what these young men are all about, to be a part of a program, and then they move on to whatever the endeavors are. Now, if they're good enough to go to the NFL, hey, that's great. That's awesome. But understand, 99% of the people that you see playing college football are not going to be good enough to go to the NFL. So when I'm watching a player who had all this hype around him, I'm watching him just not perform when they played against Boston College. Yeah, he's still on commercials, making money, and this is his third school that he transferred to, and the school that he left with Clemson, they're losing their way. They're collapsed as a program because they're not taking any transfers. They've kind of decided that instead of trying to build through a transfer portal, they're going to still do what they have to do and build from the high school ranks and building from high school players and try to develop them. And we see how far behind they are from what looked like the national champions of this year. What it looks like it's going to be a Georgia versus Texas national championship. That's just my prediction, going into only 2 weeks of the season. But the bottom line is Clemson has fallen off since this transfer portal, and everyone is just grabbing kids out of the portal. And then you have a player like DJU, who is at Florida State now, who, again, a team that went undefeated. Now, I'm not here to just blame one player. Understand, Florida State has a bigger problem than just at quarterback. But at the same time, also, you got to look at the way he played, and he missed a ton of throws, and he was not, he clearly isn't the guy that's going to build the program and going to be a part of building that program for the future, taking the program into the future. And the question now becomes, when we see two programs, and again, I said this, I wrote about this in the article, that when it comes to this topic, you have two programs like Florida State and Clemson, who at one point, this was a huge game, man. It's a huge rivalry. They were both in the ACC. That Clemson-Florida State game was always something to look forward to. It was always one of my favorite rivalries was to see Clemson, Florida State, going at it and stuff like that, because we knew it was a national championship berth, a playoff berth was on the line when it came to Clemson, Florida versus Florida State, because they were the two top teams in the ACC. And as they go at it, we're kind of having those national championship implications, thinking about it. And there was just some excitement, man. There was excitement in regards to who was going to get in. And, these two teams are really, really going at it in the ACC. And to see them two programs collapse not only to see them collapse in a way where you had this incredibly talented player out of high school going from Clemson and then eventually becoming a Seminole, and he's not even doing that well as a Seminole. That's a cause for concern when we're talking about trade-offs, all right? Trade-offs, which is what I said we were going to discuss at the beginning, but we talk college football, I could talk about it for hours, all right? Now, when I'm talking about trade-offs, this is what I mean, all right? Back when I played in 2010 and then immediately after I was through playing, I got into the college scouting game. I was a college scout, kind of the agent type guy, going to high school kids, trying to shop them around and, get them on the board for certain college teams and all that kind of stuff, right? I even read Tim Tebow's. Tim Tebow wrote a book titled Through My Eyes, where he even started to allude to the idea of college football players getting paid, which, again, I'm former college football player myself, former walk-on at that. Would I have loved the idea of college football players getting paid? One motherfucking 1,000%. Do I love the idea of them being able to jump into a transfer portal and, be able to find a better situation and all that kind of stuff? 1,000 motherfucking percent. I wrote an entire book on this topic. It's called Transfer in D1. I was all for it. I was all for it. However, the trade-offs that are coming with the transfer portal and now the ability for college players to make money off their name, image, and likeness. And nowadays, even with these Power Five schools, these coaches, the coaches too, but these universities can pay the players directly as employees now, which is going to cause even more problems. The trade-offs is now college football has lost exactly what it was meant to be. All right. It was meant to be something that complements the NFL. All right. There's a couple of the biggest one. The biggest one is what I just said. All right. College football, I'm going to say it again so we're clear, was meant to complement the NFL. It was supposed to be something that's complementary to the NFL, where, like I said before, guys go there, they develop, they get better, and then if they're good enough, they go to the NFL. It was never meant for what it is now, where guys are trying to transfer here and make a little money here and put themselves in situations where they're padding their stats or they're starting right away so they get a better chance in the NFL and all that, so they get looked at in the draft and stuff like that, which again, that was never meant to be what the college game is supposed to be. And now we have a situation because of the ability for kids to just jump ship like a DJU instead of you sticking it out at Clemson. Understand, Clemson at one point they're going to be bringing in the best guys every year. So yes, you're going to have to deal with the Cade or the quarterbacks or whatever, and you're going to have to fucking compete. Don't just jump ship. Don't just, I'm not the starter, so I'm going to go jump somewhere else so I can start somewhere else and mess up that program. No, go and compete and do what you got to do. If you really about your shit, compete. All right, compete. And for you, as someone who is him, again, now he didn't never ask for this notoriety. He's just, again, a talented guy. But for him to now have this following like Trevor Lawrence did and be built up on that standard, on that pedestal, now when the young kids are looking at him, they're thinking, or not only young kids, but you get young parents, young families, people who are being introduced to the game. Now in their mind, they're just jumping ship. They're going to try to go to this certain high school or go play for this certain youth program that's going to get them a better shot at making it to this program so they can get drafted. All of the ripple effects that's happening when you see a kid who is as talented as DJU jump ship and ruin, and because he's the quarterback now, he has to kind of take it on the chin, where he's now kind of the one that is ruining these programs or is not making them better, not doing what was expected of him. It was the same thing with one of the best quarterbacks I've seen in high school. Probably one of the most hyped ones. He didn't grow as tall as I think the coaches wanted him to, but his name's Tate Martell. Tate Martell was another one. He's out here in Miami. He started out at Ohio State, came out to Miami, then he went back to Vegas and, just, I guess, kind of wrapped up playing football altogether. But this was one of the best high school players, prospects that the world has seen. And now, again, did not pan out in college. And that's the problem. That's the trade-off. That's what's happening in this game. The college game is no longer complementing the NFL the way it should be. Now it's starting to look and be like the NFL, where it's just free agency every single year. A whole roster is turned over. Guys aren't developing. And if that continues, let me just tell you what's going to happen is, instead of the NFL being something that the college game can use as a complement to their game, now it just becomes something that's competition. It just becomes competition because, as fans of teams, the majority of these programs, they have their large fan bases because of alumni. These programs are funded through alumni. These programs are about tradition. These programs are about, again, it's a school first. It's a school. It's an academic. It's an image for It's an institute for academics. All right. It's a place where people are going to better their lives and get themselves better. It is not a place that is going to serve as a springboard or a way for you to catapult into the NFL. That's not the way it works. The way it should be working is it's a situation where they're developing people. Guys are developing as programs that are being a part of a tradition. And if NFL's there, if you're good enough, then hey, congratulations, go play in the NFL. But it's not meant to be what this NFL draft has created. And I've said it so many times. The solution to this, if you're going to go that route with guys being able to transfer whenever they want, pretty much, and the ability for the athletes to get paid the way they're getting paid now, you now have to implement a feeder system. If you were going to do this, the trade-off should have been get rid of the NFL draft, implement a feeder system to where if you're a DJU type of a guy, instead of you going and transferring to a bunch of different college programs, you should have been able to leave Clemson, go directly to, let's say, a feeder team let's say it's the Carolina Panthers, since they're in Carolina, right? Let's say the Carolina Panthers had a team in Rock Hill, call them the Rock Hill Blue Buttons. I don't give a fuck. Just call them some little city in North Carolina, South Carolina. They build a feeder franchise there. They are funding this feeder franchise. Instead of DJU just leaving Clemson and going to Oregon State, DJU now has an opportunity because, again, he has the measurables, he has the intangibles to be good enough to play in the NFL. Let's let him go to a feeder league instead of going to a bunch of college programs, where these college programs need to be focusing on bringing the high school talent in so those high school players can develop and eventually build the program. That should be the role of the college coach. But the college coach should not need to be compromised by taking all of these transfer portal kids, because it's not going to serve the overall game better. It's going to lose what the game should be about, which is the developmental element to the game, right? So if DJU has a feeder franchise that he can go to, he goes, he develops, he performs. If he, gets a cup of tea in one of these NFL franchises, congratulations. If he doesn't, hey, he made some money doing while he was with his feeder team. He's able to take some classes. He could pay for his own way when he's at Clemson. Whatever it is, there's opportunities, there's ways of being able to avoid this mess that we're seeing in the portal. And we see it it has gotten worse every single year. Every single year it has gotten worse. I mean, look at how bad Colorado looked just this week. I mean, I'm recording this on the second Saturday of college football season, and my Michigan Wolverines went down. The Notre Dame, actually, it was a stunner that Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, but every year they've been overrated. But the big news has been obviously Colorado for the past 2 years with Coach Prime and all the hype and attention that he's brought to that program, all the transfer portal kids that he's brought in, the most transfer portal kids, period. And we've seen how progressively worse the program and the team, the actual product on the field, we've seen how worse they've gotten week after week after week after week, when they decided that they're going to bring in so many damn transfer portal kids. I mean, they may mess around and go and literally only win one game all year. I mean, that's how bad they look against Nebraska. All right. So it's important that you understand the trade-offs. And from a personal standpoint, and just a suggestion out here for you business owners, when you're employed, because all of this happened, by the way, because, a lot of like I was saying, the players felt like they were putting in enough work. So felt like the argument on the players' end and the people who believed that the players should get paid, which again, I'm not saying I'm not in favor of it. I'm in favor of the players getting paid. It just needs to be more structured. The argument that was made was that these college players are bringing in billions of dollars to the university and they deserve to get paid something, which was a very strong and a very fair argument. All right. So as a business owner, when you're hearing from your employees that want to get paid more because of what they're bringing in, it's important that you hear them out, but it's also important to use your discernment and understand that there's going to be trade-offs by allowing them to get paid, number one. But number two, if you are going to buckle to their demands, which I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but if you are going to do it, make sure that the essence and certain elements are still in place. And you got to ask yourself, what's the thing that I'm going to have to trade off in order to put this thing together and keep everything running, keep my business running pretty much the way I was running before, and having my bottom line not affected with these new rules, because that's what has happened. All right. The bottom line to college athletics in general is being ruined because the main revenue generator, which is college football, it is losing its way, and it's now starting to lose what it was meant to be. And that when you lose that bottom line, when you lose the ability to be a complement to the NFL, that's when the foundation of college football is falling right under you. So the feeder system, implementing the feeder system and trading that NFL drafted, I'm telling you, I will not stop talking about it. This is my life work. And like I said, there's an episode coming on the difference between a person's work and their job. But it's so very important that we get this feeder system implemented ASAP, and do away with this draft, because we're going to see the demise of college athletics if something doesn't get done quickly. All right, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.